I say this with a deep sense of gratitude for every single person who got in this fight, every single person who tried on a new idea, every single person who just moved a little in their notion of what a president of the United States should look like.
That, as you well know, is former presidential candidate Elizabeth Warren dropping out of the race on Thursday. Warren did not win a single state on Super Tuesday, and when asked if she thought gender played a role in her losses, she called that a trap question for women in politics. She wrote this: if you say, yeah, there was sexism in this race, everyone says, whiner. If you say, no, there was no sexism, about a bazillion women think, what planet do you live on? Well, Sara Chatfield is a political science professor at the University of Denver, and you've done some research in this area of gender and politics. What do you think?
I mean, I think Senator Warren is totally correct in that statement that it's a bit of a double bind when you're asking an individual candidate whether they think sexism played a role in their particular race. I think it's interesting to look at the whole field and the whole primary race and asking that question, though, because the Democratic Party started off with this incredibly diverse field in terms of both race and gender, and now the final two candidates are white men. And so I think even though you could say every individual woman candidate certainly wasn't perfect and had flaws, and that's true, and Sanders and Biden are also flawed candidates, but they were the ones left standing at the end of this race. And so I think looking in at that broader perspective rather than just at one particular candidate, but at the whole field, kind of puts that in a little more perspective as the role that gender may have played, especially in voters trying to assess electability.
Because no one ever asks that of a man, right?
Yeah.
I
mean, I think there were and are questions that voters have about both Sanders and Biden on electability, frankly, but those didn't become the controlling narratives of their campaigns so far.
So does your research show that there are, in fact, structural biases in society?
So I haven't done specific research on this, but the political science research more generally, I think it would show that in non-presidential campaigns, when women run, and they're less likely to choose to run for a variety of reasons, but when they run, they're equally likely to male candidates to win those elections. But all of that research is really looking at legislative races and things below the presidential level. And it seems that when voters are looking at candidates for president, and maybe it's something about it being this high office, commander-in-chief, it's just harder for them to picture a woman there. Although I'll also add, Hillary Clinton did win the popular vote in the last time we had an election. A woman did win the nomination for the Democratic Party. So I don't think it's impossible, but I do certainly think gender
There's
stereotypes
something that happens because even for Democrats and Republican women, I mean, we've never had a woman governor here, and we do well at the legislative level. We've had a lot of women represented in all political parties, but something seems to stop there. Why?
Well, actually, nationwide, women are governors at about the same rate as they are represented in state legislatures. So I think it's interesting about Colorado to ask why it might be a particular problem here. But nationwide governorships aren't necessarily so hard for women to crack into. For the presidency, that's really been a challenge. And I think you know, voter beliefs about who seems presidential and also about how particular actions on the part of candidates are viewed as President Trump had this quote about Elizabeth Warren today that voters think that she's mean, right? In comparison to other candidates who are equally likely to advocate for their policies. I think perceptions can really color how voters view a candidate.
So how do, for any of the candidates, how do they speak to women now? How do they, what is their takeaway as a candidate who wants to represent women?
That's a great point. Yeah, I mean, I think male candidates certainly can still have a message for and attract women voters, and I don't think women are going to somehow stay home in the presidential election. Coming up here, I think, I guess one thing I would say is women are incredibly diverse as a group, and they're not just, there's not a woman voter. Like and really partisan divisions in some ways are larger. Like if you look at views on a policy we might think of as a women's rights policy like abortion. The partisan divide is much, much greater of Democrats versus Republicans than men versus women. Men and women actually have quite similar views to one another on a topic like abortion. So I don't know that you can just say, I'll appeal to women by doing this, because women are
We
so
are that
diverse.
complicated, aren't we?
Yeah.
Sara Chatfield, thank you so much. Appreciate your insight. Back in a moment.